The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. A relationship is supposed to bring peace, not chaos. It should strengthen your character, not weaken your spirit. But when the balance is lost, when the weight of love turns into the burden of suffering, then the Stoic path becomes clear. You must act with wisdom, not fear. Today, you discover 7 undeniable signs that it's time to walk away from your relationship. Watch until the end, because understanding these signs might just save you from years of wasted time and unnecessary pain. And if you've ever faced a moment like this, comment below and share your story. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because self-mastery is a journey we walk together. Now, let's get into it. Chapter 1. The goodness is gone. At the heart of any strong relationship lies kindness, admiration, and mutual effort. In the beginning, these things flow naturally. You respect each other, support each other's dreams, and work through difficulties as a team. Love feels effortless, and connection is strong. But what happens when all of that disappears? When the goodness in a relationship fades, it doesn't happen overnight. It erodes slowly, like waves against a shoreline, wearing down everything in its path until one day you look around and realize there's nothing left but resentment, exhaustion, and indifference. The warmth that once held you together turns cold, and what used to feel like a deep connection now feels like a hollow obligation. Maybe you used to admire each other, but now you barely acknowledge each other's achievements. The things that once excited you about your partner now feel mundane, or worse, irritating. Maybe you used to be eager to share your thoughts, your worries, your dreams, but now silence fills the space where laughter and deep conversations used to live. Conversations become mechanical, something you go through just to maintain a sense of normalcy. Even basic gestures, like saying "I love you" or showing affection, lose their sincerity. What was once genuine is now forced, robotic, and empty. At first, you may dismiss it as a rough patch. You tell yourself that things will get better, that it's just stress, routine, or life getting in the way. You hold on to the good memories, convincing yourself that the love you once had will return. But over time, those good memories feel more like relics of the past than reflections of the present. And then a harsh truth emerges: love, if not nurtured, dies. A Stoic man understands that relationships, like everything else in life, are ruled by impermanence. Feelings change. People grow apart. And when the foundation of love is gone, you're left with 2 choices: rebuild or leave. But rebuilding requires effort from both sides. If you've already tried, if you've poured your energy into saving something that only you are fighting for, then the answer is clear. Love cannot be carried by one person alone. If the relationship has turned into a battlefield, where every interaction feels like a struggle, where affection has been replaced with cold indifference, then staying is no longer an act of strength, it's an act of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of change. Fear of admitting that something once beautiful has run its course. But a Stoic does not fear reality. He accepts it. He does not cling to what is already gone. He understands that walking away is sometimes the only rational move. Because staying in something dead is not loyalty, it's self-betrayal. And self-betrayal is the deepest wound of all. It is the act of silencing your own needs, of suppressing your truth, of pretending that things are fine when your soul is screaming otherwise. It is choosing comfort over authenticity, familiarity over fulfillment, and avoidance over courage. But a Stoic man refuses to live in such a way. He knows that to deny reality is to deny himself. The decline of a relationship is often felt before it is seen. It's in the moments where your words no longer feel heard, where your efforts feel unappreciated, where your presence feels unnoticed. It's in the sighs that go unspoken, the frustrations left unexpressed, the love that used to feel abundant but now feels rationed in small, obligatory doses. Love does not disappear in a dramatic explosion, it fades quietly, slipping through the cracks of neglect, indifference, and emotional distance. And yet, many people stay. They stay because they fear regret, they stay because they fear loneliness, they stay because they think that holding on to something broken is better than having nothing at all. But this is an illusion. Holding on to something dead does not bring life, it drains you of it. A relationship without love is a weight, not a home. A connection without warmth is an anchor, not a refuge. So, the question is not whether the goodness is gone, it is whether you are willing to accept it. Are you willing to acknowledge that what once flourished has withered? Are you brave enough to walk away from what no longer serves you? A Stoic man does not allow fear to dictate his choices. He does not cling to the past in the hope that it will suddenly resurrect itself. He recognizes that when love is truly gone, the most courageous thing he can do is let it go. Because in the end, love should never feel like a duty. It should never feel like a weight. It should inspire, uplift, and breathe life into your existence. And if it no longer does, then it is not love, it is an illusion of what once was. And a Stoic man does not live in illusions. He faces the truth, no matter how painful it may be. So, if the goodness is gone, be honest with yourself. Not with nostalgia, not with fear, but with clarity. Because the greatest tragedy is not losing love, but staying in something that no longer deserves to be called love. Chapter 2. You're being disrespected. Respect is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. Without it, love turns into control, trust turns into suspicion, and security turns into anxiety. The moment your partner stops treating you with dignity, the relationship has already started to rot from the inside. Disrespect is not something that suddenly appears, it creeps in slowly, eroding the bond between two people until all that's left is resentment, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. Disrespect doesn't always come in obvious forms. It's not just screaming, name-calling, or blatant betrayal. Sometimes, it hides in the smallest details, in passive-aggressive remarks, in sarcasm meant to cut you down, in the way they dismiss your feelings instead of addressing them. It's in the eye rolls when you speak, the condescending tone in arguments, the way they make jokes at your expense and then accuse you of being too sensitive when you don't laugh along. It can be as subtle as ignoring your input in important decisions or as manipulative as making you feel guilty for having your own needs and desires. And then, there are the clearer forms of disrespect, the constant criticism that makes you doubt yourself, the disregard for your boundaries, the lies that chip away at your trust. If your partner cheats and expects forgiveness without remorse, if they dismiss your concerns and continue the same hurtful behaviors, if they belittle your achievements and make you feel small, then they are showing you exactly what you mean to them. An irrational man listens when people reveal their true nature. Love is not an excuse for mistreatment, and no amount of emotional attachment should blind you to the reality of consistent disrespect. A Stoic man does not tolerate disrespect because he values himself too much to be degraded. He understands that love without respect is nothing more than manipulation in disguise. If a partner truly cares, they will take your feelings into account, they will acknowledge when they've hurt you, and they will make an effort to change. But if they repeatedly cross the same lines, mock your pain, or gaslight you into believing that you are overreacting, then they do not love you, they enjoy controlling you. And a relationship built on control is not a partnership, it is a cage. One of the most toxic traps people fall into is believing that if they endure enough disrespect, eventually, their partner will see their worth and start treating them better. But that is not how human nature works. The more you tolerate mistreatment, the more your partner will believe that you accept it. The longer you stay in a toxic dynamic, the more they will push boundaries, seeing just how much you are willing to take before you finally break. When someone realizes that there are no consequences for their actions, they have no reason to change. Instead, they will continue taking advantage of your patience, your love, and your willingness to forgive. A strong man sets his own standards. He does not beg for the bare minimum. He does not try to convince someone to respect him. Respect should be given freely in a relationship, not something you have to fight for. The moment you have to explain why you deserve basic decency, you are already in the wrong relationship. No one who truly values you will make you justify why you should be treated with kindness and consideration. Ask yourself, how many times have you made excuses for their behavior? How many times have you told yourself that they didn't mean it, that they were just in a bad mood, that things will get better? How many times have you felt the sting of disrespect but pushed it aside because you didn't want to start a fight? How often have you put your own feelings last, just to maintain peace that only benefits them? Now, imagine this: if a close friend came to you and told you that their partner was treating them the same way yours treats you, what would you say to them? Would you tell them to stay? Or would you tell them to walk away because they deserve better? If you would not accept this treatment for someone you love, why are you accepting it for yourself? You already know the answer. So why aren't you following your own advice? To stay in a disrespectful relationship is to betray yourself. It is to allow someone else to dictate your worth instead of recognizing it for yourself. A partner who loves you uplifts you. They do not tear you down. They do not make you feel small. They do not strip you of your confidence. A person who cares for you will listen, they will communicate, and they will make an effort to show their respect in both words and actions. If your partner consistently disrespects you, if they refuse to change despite knowing how their behavior affects you, if they make you feel like you are constantly walking on eggshells, then the relationship is already over. It just hasn't been acknowledged yet. The truth is, you cannot fix a relationship alone. If your partner does not meet you halfway, then you are not in a relationship, you are in a battle you cannot win. The only logical response to consistent disrespect is to leave. Not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough to know that you deserve better. Walking away is not giving up, it is choosing to respect yourself when someone else refuses to do so. Chapter 3. You're trying too hard. Love should be effortless in the sense that both people willingly contribute to its growth. It should not feel like a burden that only one person is carrying. But when you find yourself constantly chasing, constantly proving your worth, and constantly fighting to keep the relationship alive, you are not in a healthy dynamic, you are simply struggling against the inevitable. You initiate all the conversations. If you don't text, there's silence. If you don't call, there's distance. You plan the dates, put in the effort, express affection, while they remain passive, indifferent, and detached. You overthink your every move, trying to find ways to make them happy, to capture their attention, to make them see your value. And yet, despite everything you do, nothing changes. You feel unappreciated, unseen, and worst of all, exhausted. This kind of emotional labor is draining. It wears you down mentally, emotionally, and even physically. A relationship should not feel like a job where you have to clock in every day just to earn the bare minimum of attention. Love is a two-way street, not a test of endurance where one person does all the work while the other coasts along without effort. A Stoic man values balance. He understands that love is not about proving yourself, it is about mutual investment. If you are always the one initiating, always the one trying, always the one carrying the weight of the connection, then something is deeply wrong. A truly invested partner will show it not just with words, but with actions. And if their actions show disinterest, then words mean nothing. The hardest truth to accept is this: if someone wants to be with you, they will be. They will call. They will reach out. They will make an effort to see you, to talk to you, to be present. They will not leave all the responsibility in your hands. The simplest way to test this is to stop trying. Pull back. Do nothing. See what happens. If they care, they will notice your absence and step up. But if they don't even acknowledge the change, if they continue living their life as if you were never there, then the truth is undeniable. They were never as committed as you were. Many people fear pulling back because they already know what the answer will be. They know, deep down, that the other person won't make an effort. That's why they keep trying, because if they stop, the illusion shatters. The reality becomes clear. The love they thought they had was one-sided. But a Stoic man does not cling to illusions. He does not waste his energy on people who do not value him. He does not fight for attention from someone who should be willingly giving it. So ask yourself, are you in a relationship, or are you just convincing yourself that you are? If you walked away today, would they even try to stop you? Or would they let you go without a second thought? If the answer is the latter, then the decision is already made. You just have to be strong enough to act on it. Stop trying. Walk away. And free yourself from the burden of loving someone who doesn't love you the same way in return. Chapter 4. It's all about the other person. A relationship should be a partnership, an exchange of love, respect, and effort between two people who genuinely care for each other. It should be a space where both individuals feel valued, where support flows in both directions, and where sacrifices are made not out of obligation but out of love. But when a relationship becomes a one-sided arrangement, where everything revolves around the other person while your needs are consistently ignored, then you are no longer in a relationship. You are serving someone else's desires at the cost of your own. At first, it might not be obvious. Maybe you started by compromising here and there, cancelling plans to accommodate theirs, shifting your priorities to support their dreams, excusing their lack of effort because you believed they would eventually reciprocate. You told yourself that relationships require patience, that love means sacrifice, and that one day they would appreciate everything you do. You reassured yourself that their dismissive attitude was temporary, that they were just going through something, and that in time, they would return the same level of devotion you offered so freely. But over time, you begin to notice a pattern. They expect you to always be available, yet they never adjust their schedule for you. They demand your emotional support, but when you need them, they are nowhere to be found. They expect you to listen, to care, to understand, but they dismiss your struggles as insignificant. Every conversation, every decision, every conflict is centered around their feelings, their struggles, their satisfaction, while yours are treated as an afterthought, or worse, an inconvenience. This is not love. This is servitude. A healthy relationship requires balance. Both people should feel seen, heard, and valued. Both should experience the security of knowing they can rely on each other equally. A relationship should bring peace, not emotional exhaustion. But when you are constantly sacrificing your happiness just to keep the peace, when your well-being takes a backseat to their selfishness, you are dealing with a person who does not respect balance. And a person who does not respect balance will drain you dry, leaving you exhausted, emotionally depleted, and questioning your own worth. What makes this situation even worse is that the more you give, the more they expect. The more you bend, the more they push. They begin to take your kindness as weakness, your patience as permission, your love as something they are entitled to rather than something they should appreciate. And soon, you find yourself stuck in a cycle where you keep giving in the hopes that they will finally see your worth, while they continue to take without a second thought. You start walking on eggshells, fearing that if you demand too much, they will leave. You suppress your needs, convince yourself that it's not so bad, and tell yourself that maybe this is just how love works. But deep down, you know better. Deep down, you know that love should not make you feel invisible. Love should not make you feel like a burden. A Stoic man understands that love is not measured by how much you give up for someone. It is measured by mutual respect, by the willingness to meet each other halfway. He does not live to please others at the cost of his own dignity. He does not surrender his self-respect just to maintain a relationship that only benefits the other person. He does not chase affection from someone who only gives it when it's convenient for them. He does not waste his energy proving his worth to someone who refuses to acknowledge it. Think about it. When was the last time your partner truly prioritized your happiness? When was the last time they made a sacrifice for you? When was the last time they put in effort without you having to ask for it? If you find yourself always bending, always compromising, always carrying the emotional weight of the relationship while they do nothing, then you are not an equal partner. You are simply a convenience. Someone they keep around because you make their life easier while they put in minimal effort. And here's the hard truth: if they truly cared, you wouldn't have to beg for fairness. If they valued you, balance would come naturally. If they respected you, they wouldn't expect you to carry the entire burden of making things work. Relationships are not about one person taking and the other endlessly giving. They are about two people working together, building something that benefits both. Anything less is not love, it is exploitation disguised as devotion. So ask yourself, are you in a relationship, or are you just fulfilling someone else's needs while yours are ignored? If you disappeared tomorrow, would they even notice, or would they simply find someone else to replace the role you've been playing? If you stopped trying, would the relationship collapse, or would they step up and finally put in the effort? Would they even realize the void you left behind, or would they simply move on without a second thought? The answer is clear. A Stoic man gives, but only where it is reciprocated. He does not chase validation from someone who refuses to give him the same level of care and respect. He does not cling to a relationship where he is seen as disposable. If your partner refuses to meet you halfway, then you are not in love, you are being used. And the only way to reclaim your worth is to walk away. Because the moment you realize you are the only one trying is the moment you must stop trying. And when you finally do, you'll understand that real love does not require endless sacrifice, it requires mutual effort. Love should be a source of strength, not something that drains you. It should bring peace, not constant anxiety. It should lift you up, not wear you down. And most importantly, it should be shared equally. Anything less is not love, it is self-sacrifice disguised as devotion. So choose yourself. Choose your peace. Choose a love that values you just as much as you value it. And if you find yourself in a relationship where that balance does not exist, have the courage to walk away. Because you deserve more than just being an option in someone else's life. You deserve to be cherished, respected, and loved for exactly who you are. Chapter 5. You feel more alone with them than without them. Loneliness is often misunderstood. Most people think it only happens when you're physically alone, but the deepest kind of loneliness is when you're with someone, yet you feel completely unseen, unheard, and disconnected. It's the kind of loneliness that eats at you when your partner is sitting beside you but barely acknowledges your presence. When you try to express your thoughts and feelings, but they don't listen. When their responses feel empty, forced, or indifferent. When you realize you could disappear and they wouldn't even notice. That's the loneliest place to be, and not in solitude, but in a relationship that has lost its meaning. At first, you tell yourself it's just a phase. That things will get better. That they're just stressed, distracted, or preoccupied. You make excuses for why they don't ask how your day was, why they seem more engaged with their phone than with you, why every deep conversation turns into a shallow, surface-level interaction. You tell yourself that love is about patience, about endurance. But eventually, you start to wonder, should love really feel this isolating? A relationship should be a refuge. a place where you can be yourself without fear of judgment. Where your presence is valued, your emotions are acknowledged, and your voice is heard. If you feel lonelier in the relationship than you did when you were single, then something is terribly wrong. Because love is not supposed to feel like a one-way conversation. It's not supposed to feel like begging for attention or fighting to be noticed. If you have to force connection, then connection no longer exists. A Stoic man understands that being alone is not the same as being lonely. He does not fear solitude, he embraces it. Because true strength comes from being at peace with yourself, not from clinging to a relationship that no longer brings fulfillment. If you feel lonelier with your partner than you do when you're by yourself, that's not love, it's a slow emotional death. Think about it. When was the last time your partner made you feel truly seen? When was the last time they asked you a question that showed they cared? When was the last time you felt like they were genuinely present with you, rather than just going through the motions? If you can't remember, then you already know the answer. A man who values himself will not settle for a relationship that drains him. He will not allow himself to be emotionally starved just to say he has someone. Because staying in a relationship out of fear of being alone, fear of change, fear of the unknown, is the fastest way to lose yourself. So ask yourself, are you holding on to the relationship because it brings you happiness, or just because you're afraid to let go? If it's the latter, then you're not in love, you're just stuck. And the only way to break free from loneliness is to choose yourself. The answer is clear. If a relationship makes you feel more isolated than being alone ever did, then it's already over. And the longer you stay, the deeper that emptiness will grow. A Stoic man does not cling to something that no longer serves him. He chooses peace over attachment. He lets go, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Chapter 6. The thought of leaving feels like freedom. Your instincts never lie. They whisper the truth before your mind is ready to accept it. You can bury them under logic, drown them in excuses, or ignore them for the sake of comfort, but they always resurface. If the mere thought of leaving your relationship makes you feel lighter, if you fantasize about a life without your partner and feel a strange sense of relief, then deep down, you already know the answer. Your heart has checked out. Your mind is just waiting for you to act on what you already feel. In a healthy relationship, imagining life without your partner feels like a loss. The thought of separation brings sadness, a sense of emptiness, and the fear of losing something precious. You picture the void they would leave behind, the memories that would become painful, and the future you had once envisioned together crumbling apart. But when a relationship has run its course, the opposite happens. Instead of dread, you feel hope. Instead of grief, you feel excitement. It's not because you're heartless, it's because you've been suffocating for too long, and your soul is craving air. It's because deep down, you know that staying is not love anymore, it's endurance. People often mistake comfort for love. You get used to someone being there, even if they no longer bring you happiness. You convince yourself that leaving would be too painful, too complicated, too disruptive. You tell yourself that every relationship has its ups and downs, that maybe things will get better, that maybe you're just being too emotional. But ask yourself, if love were truly alive, would the idea of freedom feel this good? Would picturing a life without them feel so much easier than the reality of staying? If the thought of walking away brings more peace than staying, that is not love. That is your survival instinct trying to wake you up. A Stoic man does not lie to himself. He does not cling to an illusion for the sake of familiarity. He does not let fear of the unknown chain into a life that no longer fulfills him. If every time he imagines walking away, he feels like a weight has been lifted, he recognizes that his body, mind, and soul are sending him a message. He listens. He trusts himself. He does not stay in a situation that drains him just because he is afraid of starting over. He knows that staying in misery is a greater loss than walking into the unknown. Think about it. When did you stop feeling excited about your relationship? When did love turn into obligation? When did their presence stop bringing warmth and start feeling like an anchor weighing you down? If you could fast forward to a future where you are free, happy, and at peace, does that future seem more appealing than the life you have now? Do you ever find yourself longing for solitude, craving a life where you don't have to answer to them, explain yourself, or feel guilty for simply existing as you are? If so, you already have your answer. Fear is what keeps most people stuck. The fear of loneliness. The fear of regret. The fear of starting over. The fear of making a mistake and realizing too late that they were the right person all along. But a Stoic man sees fear for what it is, a false enemy, a trick of the mind designed to keep him from reaching his full potential. He understands that fear is temporary, but regret lasts forever. He does not let fear dictate his decisions. He follows reason. And reason says this: if your greatest fantasy is escaping your relationship, then your reality is a prison. If leading brings relief, staying will only bring more resentment. If you are fighting harder to convince yourself to stay than you are fighting for the relationship itself, then you already know it is over. Staying is not an act of love, it's an act of self-betrayal. Because love does not feel like a cage. Love does not make you fantasize about escape. Love does not force you to choose between your happiness and their comfort. If you are with someone who makes you feel trapped, that is not love. That is survival. The moment you realize that freedom feels better than staying, you owe it to yourself to leave. The moment you start imagining a future without them and it makes you feel more at peace than the present, you owe it to yourself to listen. Because the truth is simple: when love is right, you fight to keep it. When love is wrong, you dream about walking away. And those dreams? They're not just wishful thinking. They're your subconscious telling you what your heart already knows. And when your heart and mind agree, the only thing left to do is act. Chapter 7. You no longer recognize yourself. A relationship should be a force that elevates you, strengthening your identity rather than dissolving it. The right partner encourages you to be the best version of yourself, supports your goals, and helps you grow emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. But what happens when the relationship starts to strip away the very essence of who you are? It doesn't happen all at once. At first, it's small compromises, things you let slide for the sake of peace. You stop hanging out with certain friends because your partner doesn't like them. You give up hobbies you once loved because they take up too much time. You suppress your opinions to avoid arguments. Over time, these sacrifices add up. One day, you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back at you. Your confidence is gone. The spark that made you who you are has faded. The things that once excited you now feel meaningless. Instead of feeling alive in your relationship, you feel trapped, like you're walking on eggshells, constantly adjusting yourself to fit into the version of you that your partner prefers. And the worst part? You don't even know when it started. A Stoic man understands that self-respect is non-negotiable. He knows that love should never come at the cost of his identity. Relationships require compromise, but there is a fine line between compromise and self-erasure. The moment you start sacrificing your core values, dreams, and self-worth just to keep someone else happy, the relationship has already become toxic. Perhaps your ambitions used to be limitless, but now you hesitate before making decisions because you're constantly worried about how your partner will react. Maybe you used to have strong opinions and beliefs, but now you silence yourself out of fear of conflict. The more you suppress who you truly are, the more you lose yourself in the process. And that's not love, that's self-betrayal. Real love does not demand that you shrink yourself to make someone else feel bigger. It does not require you to abandon your dreams to accommodate someone else's insecurities. A true partner will walk beside you, not ask you to dim your light so they can shine. A Stoic man does not allow himself to be molded into something he is not. He stands firm in his beliefs, his ambitions, and his identity. If a relationship begins to suffocate who he is at his core, he understands that staying is not a sign of devotion, it's a sign of weakness. And weakness has no place in the pursuit of self-mastery. The most painful truth is this: if you have to lose yourself to keep someone else, then they were never truly yours to begin with. You deserve a relationship that allows you to be fully, unapologetically yourself. And if you've already lost sight of that person, the only way to find him again is to walk away. Because the final and most undeniable sign that it's time to leave is this: if staying means sacrificing your soul, then leaving is the only way to reclaim it. Leaving a relationship is never easy, but neither is staying in one that drains your soul. The true Stoic does not fear endings because he knows that every ending is a new beginning. If any of these signs spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you found value in this, like, subscribe, and remember, your peace is worth more than any relationship.